G'day guys, welcome to part 2 of the van tour videos. Now in this video we're going to run through the more technical side of it. I'm going to start off with the electrics, move through to the water and the hot water system, how the water tanks are configured, and then we're going to move on to lighting. Now the main thing is I want this to be as simple as possible. I really didn't want to pay for people to do it, so I had to be within my skill range. And thirdly, I wanted it to be expandable, so that if I couldn't afford to do something in the beginning, then I could certainly move on and do it at a later date. So let's get going. We'll just move on to the electrics.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning, time to go. We are all looking for adventure. 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 We are all looking for adventure.
Good morning and welcome. Now before I start this part 2 of the van tour video, I'd just like to shout out to a couple of our new subscribers for this week, and they are Professor Quai, I think I've said that right, the Combi Studio, and Wayne Smith. Thanks for supporting us. Please follow us, subscribe, comment and like our videos, just to show us a bit of support. Thanks again. Here we go. So to get started, I'm just going to run through a quick wiring diagram of the van. Now you can see the layout there, and basically the way that it, again, like I said, I want it to be as simple as possible. So the battery compartment on the Sprinters and the Crafters is below the footwell of the passenger seat. And I wanted the cable run to be as short as possible between that and the house battery, because I can use the engine to charge the house batteries. Now, in between, so what I did was I ran a cable from the main starter battery of the van up through a cable run to the house battery, and then in between that, in the middle of that cable, I just put a breaker switch. Now I used a breaker switch because firstly the cost of getting a battery to battery charger, and secondly just the simplicity of it. Now with the breaker switch I can either charge the house batteries from the engine, or in the event of the starter battery going flat, I can charge the starter battery from the solar panels that are in the van. Now the house batteries are 3 times 100 amp AGM batteries, and they are mounted in parallel. And I'll run through basically what that means in the van build videos for the electrics. And because I wanted basically the kitchen on the left hand side of the van, that's where the best place for the fridge was, so I then had to run a cable from the house batteries down to the left hand side of the van, and that is connected to a negative bus bar and fuse box under the bed, and also allows connection to the hot water system, the water pump, and another fridge stroke freezer which is also under the bed. Now let's get on and show you how this all fits together. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the main battery for the van, so the starting battery, is situated under the passenger seat, under the footwell of the passenger seat. Now, what I wanted was the facility to be able to charge the house batteries, which are the ones in that first cupboard, from the van engine whilst it was running. Now, again, I wanted to do this probably as cheaply and as simply as possible. So all I've done was I've run a positive cable, which is this red cable here, through the cable track from the main van battery and ran it directly to the house batteries, which is situated in that first cupboard. Now, people are going to say to themselves, well, what happens if you actually run everything flat? You're not going to be able to start the van. Now, you see a lot of videos on YouTube where people buy the controllers that isolate the automatic battery isolators that will isolate the battery automatically. Again, there is a cost involved in that, so I figured an easier and cheaper way to do it would be to add a switch, a breaker switch. So as we come round to the driver's side of the van, I'm just going to show you just down here. You'll see that there is that same red cable that comes from the main house battery, and this is around on the off side of the van, so the driver's side of the van. I've basically just put a simple breaker switch in. So obviously when we want to isolate the house batteries from the main starter battery, it's off. But then when we've got the engine running and we want to charge the house batteries, all I do is just turn it on, and there you go. When the engine's running, it just charges all of the batteries at the same time. Obviously, you need to remember that when you stop, you obviously just need to turn it off. Now, the main guts of the electrical system, which is the batteries and the solar controller and inverter, are stored in the first cupboard under the lounge. Now, the reason I chose there was I wanted to keep the cable run on these particular models of Sprinters and Crafters. The main battery for the van is under the passenger seat footwell, so I wanted to try and keep the cable length as short as possible. So I decided that I was going to put the battery and everything in this one particular cupboard. So as you can see, we also use this cupboard for storing shoes. So I've just taken all the shoes out. We've just got a shelf that fits over the battery. I'll just take that out and just quickly show you inside there. So we have three 100 amp AGM deep cycle batteries. They are mounted in parallel. I'm going to run through all this in the van build series of videos. So if you're not technically aware of what that means, then stay tuned for the van build videos. So anyway, underneath there we have three 110 amp or three 100 amp deep cycle AGM batteries. Over here we have the solar controller. Now, I just got this off eBay. I'll try and find the links to these. Again, they will be in the van build video. We've got all the associated cables now, and here with the yellow cable, this is our inverter. It's a 3/6 kilowatt inverter. Again, I wanted to go for a bit of overkill because I wanted to be able to run possibly things like a microwave, kettle, and it also runs an espresso coffee machine. So bit of overkill, but it's touch wood, so far it hasn't let us down. Also in there as well, just a bit of a safety feature. I'll run through the safety aspects later on, but just a bit of a safety feature. We have a smoke alarm, and just on top here, just about there, that is a little Bluetooth monitor that connects to your phone, that gives you a readout of the voltages. Now, again, I didn't want this build to be too technical, so I've tried to keep it as simple as possible. And so now we're just going to move on. The yellow cable that is plugged into the inverter then runs behind the lounge. I think it's about a 5-meter cable, extension cable, runs behind the lounge and then plugs into the right hand side of these two extension boards. So the one on the right is from the inverter. Now the one on the left is for basically mains power if we plug in somewhere, so plug into mains electricity somewhere, and that runs from an extension cable from the back of the van. So one of the prerequisites of this build was a full-size fridge, and we have a Waco stroke Dometic CRX 110. I think it's a compressor fridge. It's very economical to run power wise, and it's 110 litre, so basically it is a full-size fridge, and it's fitted to the kitchen area on the left hand side of the van. Now, to top this all off and to keep everything charged, in addition to the switch that runs from the main battery, on the center of the roof we have a 300-watt solar panel, and in addition to that I have a 200-watt solar blanket that we can get out just to top it all up when we're stationary. So it's just a blanket that we get out manually, plug it in. It can either be plugged into the side of the van here in the actual living accommodation or out through the back doors, and that keeps everything topped up and charged. Now, I was hoping to get this video finished in 2 parts, or this van tour finished in 2 parts, but it's kind of gone on a bit, so I think what I'm going to do is just move the explanation of the water system onto part 3. So please check back. Part 3 will be up very shortly, and thanks for watching part 2, and there's links to part 1 as well as cards. See you later.
Hello world, wake me up to another good morning. Time